Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And things have got so desperate for the South African government financially that it is now forced to go to the lender of last resort, which is the International Monetary Fund. And once you do that, they start putting in conditions for those loans, and conditions that the general black population and the ANC cadres are not going to like. COSATU is not going to like, and the South African Communist Party is not going to like. But they've run out of options, so they have no choice but to go cap in hand to the IMF. Let's put some more meat to the bone. South Africa is set to receive its first ever loan from the International Monetary Fund within days, with the IMF's 24-member executive board due to meet in Washington, D.C. on Monday to approve South Africa's application for a $4.2 billion or about 70 billion rand, in COVID-related emergency financing. Now, we know how that 500 billion rand that South Africa got to help cover the lockdown went. Yeah, there was so much looting of that money by ANC cadres, it's just absolutely disgusting. Anyway, let's continue. An announcement from the IMF is expected on Monday evening South African time, with details due later this week. Commitments South Africa has made to support the loan. Those commitments on stabilizing the public debt and implementing growth-boosting economic reforms are understood to have been made in a letter of intent that Finance Minister Tito Mboweni and Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago have already signed. The letter will be included in the IMF staff report that the fund is expected to publish in the course of the week. The Rapid Financing Instrument, or RFI, South Africa has applied for, comes with less overt conditionality than the standby arrangements the IMF traditionally offers countries that run into severe balance of payment crises, and the ANC's endorsed South Africa's application on the grounds that it would not compromise national sovereignty. However, it is expected that South Africa has still had to commit to stabilizing its public debt, along the lines of the demanding active scenario that Mboweni outlined in his supplementary budget last month, which relied on additional 250 billion rand in state spending cuts to narrow the deficit and stabilize the debt within 3 years. Well, good luck with that. There are too many people with their hands in the till. It's also expected that the government and the IMF will have agreed on a macroeconomic outlook, with a government commitment to implement reforms outlined in the Treasury's economic growth document, which was endorsed by the Cabinet. Letters of intent signed by other countries that have obtained IMF emergency funding contain similar commitments to fiscal prudence and economic recovery strategies. University of Pretoria International Development Law professor Danny Bradlow said no financial institution provided large amounts of financing without attaching conditions designed to ensure that the recipient uses the funds responsibly and pays them back as agreed. In an article on The Conversation this week, he noted, however, that the IMF conditions its financing on policy measures rather than on collateral or promises about the use of the funds, as other institutions might. The terms of the agreement would depend on how effective South Africa was in its negotiations, he said. He said, South Africa should not view the IMF either as a protagonist in its nightmares or its savior. Instead, the country should treat it as it would any other financial institution. Kganyago told a media briefing after Thursday's Monetary Policy Committee meeting that the application was in the pipeline. He said, "We did sign the letter of intent, and you will know what's in it once the IMF makes its decision and posts it on the website." Mboweni, who first spoke in March of the government's intention to approach the IMF, told Parliament on Friday that the RFI loan would be used to provide direct budget financing. He said the government expected to raise a total of about $7 billion this year from international agencies, including the IMF and World Bank, as announced in his supplementary budget last month. Now, what you're seeing happening in South Africa is that they've cleaned out the till, so now they're borrowing more money so they can clean out the till again. This is the greed of this ANC government. They are beyond disgusting. They are just completely feral. Anyway, let's continue. The finalizing of talks with the IMF comes after the board of the African Development Bank, or AFDB, this week approved a 5 billion rand loan to South Africa. The AFDB said the loan, which falls under the bank's $10 billion COVID-19 response facility and is the first budget support the AFDB has provided South Africa, would help to finance South Africa's COVID response program. Last month, the new development bank set up by the BRICS group, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, granted South Africa a $1 billion COVID-related loan and might extend a further $1.5 billion in financing to the public and private sectors. The 100 billion rand plus in loans from these finance institutions will go some way to plugging the huge hole in the government's finances. Last month's supplementary budget showed the government would be in the current year have to borrow 777 billion rand to finance its ballooning deficit, about 300 billion rand more than Mboweni projected in February. As South Africa's public finances have deteriorated, its cost of borrowing has risen. Economists warn the borrowing requirement is consuming much of the domestic savings pool and crowding out private investment. The RFI loan South Africa has applied for is repayable within 5 years and comes at an interest rate of 1.1%, substantially cheaper than the 4.5% at which South Africa's 5-year debt is trading on the market currently. Peter Kent said the conclusion of a loan agreement with the IMF would be well received in the market. He said engaging with the IMF is seen as a bit of an ideological leap in a constructive direction. In addition, though the conditionality was tiny and the hurdle to clear was low, the reason negotiations had taken time was that South Africa probably had to commit to the active scenario in the supplementary budget without bailing out South African Airways. Since the start of the pandemic, the IMF has provided COVID-related emergency financing or debt relief of about $83 billion to 77 countries, including 30 in Africa, and questions have been raised about why South Africa took so long to land the loan. Mboweni said at the time of the supplementary budget that there were tough negotiations. The cash for the IMF loan is expected to flow within a few days of the board's decision. Kaganyago said on Thursday that the dollars would be converted into rands and the Treasury would draw on them as required. So there you go, guys. Money doesn't grow on trees, but the ANC apparently think it does. Why are we surprised? Please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe. Bye for now.